All right. Well, good evening, everyone. I am Sarah Matkis-Berstecki, and I'm Vice Chairperson for Caleb. I'm also a parent of 3 kids in our Hamilton County Public Schools, and I want to welcome you to this Hamilton County School Board Candidate Forum, sponsored by Caleb, Chattanooga's in Action for Love, Equality, and Benevolence. Caleb is a grassroots organization that includes churches, labor unions, and other local nonprofits. It seeks to empower ordinary people like me to effectively participate in the political, environmental, social, and economic decisions affecting all of our lives. As we approach the school board elections, Caleb would like to focus on 3 areas in which the board will be making decisions: school infrastructure, the district's educational equity plan, and student discipline. I want to say a special thank you to our participants. All candidates were given the opportunity to attend, but we appreciate your participation today. I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves, and then I'll introduce our representatives from our co-sponsors. Microwave, yeah, oh, microphone. Yes, yeah, yeah.
Good evening, my name is Karitsa Mosley Jones, and I am the current school board representative for District 5, where I have held the seat now for 8 years in 2 terms. I am very passionate about public education and ensuring that children not only have an equitable education, but for me, in this journey, I'm at the point now of a liberated education. And so with that being said, I am running for my 3rd term. Proven leadership, I'm calling still standing on my principles of being a AAA school board member, that of advocacy, accessibility, and accountability. And I represent current schools in District 5 are Woodmore Elementary, Dalewood Middle School, Brainerd High School, Tyner Middle Academy, Tyner Academy, Harrison Elementary, and Barger Academy.
My name is Ben Connor. I'm seeking election in the District 6 school board seat. That currently has Norwell Park, CCA, Alpine Crest, the Dawn School, and I'm sorry, Rivermont. I heard you said Alpine Crest. I'm a father of 4. Currently, there will be 3 little Connor girls at Norwell Park next year. I help at the school on the PTA, sitting on the board for Spark. I chair Norman Palooza each year. I also am on the board of directors for the preschool that my children go to. I was elected the president of the board to a 2nd term recently, navigating the craziness that was COVID about 2 months after I was elected to the first set of my presidency. And I also help with the Women's Oncology Warriors, a foundation that raises money to help women fighting cancer, specifically with costs outside of treatment, clothes change sizes, transportation, lost wages, things of that nature. So I just really enjoy helping, and I want to help in the best way possible. And I want to serve the children of Hamilton County and the community at large by making our public schools better.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jenn Piroth. I am seeking the District 3 seat for the Hamilton County School Board. District 3 is the Hickson area. I have 4 children, all of whom go to school in Hamilton County at their zoned public school. I used to work for Hamilton County as a sign language interpreter. I am still a sign language interpreter. I just don't work for Hamilton County anymore. I decided I wanted to run to be on the school board because I was sitting home worrying about pretty much everything, and decided that I needed to take that worry and turn it into actionable change. Hopefully that I can use the concern that I have, the dedication that I have to students and teachers, and turn that into something that will allow me to make real change instead of just being home and worrying. So that's why I'm here. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all for being here in person. We also have representatives from our co-sponsors, Grace Episcopal Church, First Centenary United Methodist Church, Voces en la Comunidad, Unified Ed, Chattanooga Aquatic Project and Personal Development, Chattanooga Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority. So welcome to you and to those who are participating remotely. Right now we're going to have Tron, who is co-chair of our Caleb Education Task Force, give us a general introduction.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, candidates, for being here. Thank you to our co-sponsors for being here as well. My name is Tron Wilder. I'm a co-chair of the Education Task Force with Caleb. Sarah gave you a little bit of an introduction about Caleb, but Caleb is made up of three focus areas: criminal justice reform, economic mobility, and education reform. And so I, along with my co-chair, Donna Palmer, have been working with members from the community to affect change in a number of areas in our Hamilton County school system. One of the issues that we're very passionate about is the school to prison pipeline. We want to end the school to prison pipeline. And so we know that our partners on the Hamilton County School Board are very important decision makers as it pertains to making Hamilton County schools a place where all students from any background can be successful. And so we think that forums like this are extremely important to get the ideas from these school board members and the candidates who want to make decisions for our students. So thank you again for those of you joining in at home. Thank you again for those of you who are here in person, and for the candidates who decided to show up for this. We're very grateful, and we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say about the issues that are important to Caleb, issues that we think are important to all Chattanoogans.
Thank you, Tron. So we're going to begin each topic with a section with a brief introductory overview for the benefit of our community members. The first one is infrastructure. In January of this year, the Tennessee Advisory Commission on Intergovernmental Relations released an inventory of infrastructural needs. HCDE's needed school renovations additions were estimated to have a $59.46 million cost. In 2019, the Hamilton County School Board hired an independent consulting firm, MGT, to assess Hamilton County Schools' infrastructure needs and develop a plan to address them. In that plan, MGT suggested that Hamilton County build 15 new schools, renovate or build additions to 33 schools, and close 9 schools, which at the time was estimated to cost about $900 million. Since MGT's released its final master plan in 2020, Hamilton County built a new CSLA, has plans to construct a new Tyner Middle High, has repurposed Hillcrest Elementary, renovated Harrison Elementary, and closed Lakeside Academy. Hamilton County Schools is experiencing an infrastructure crisis. Our county must take bold steps to ensure that all students attend a school environment where they can thrive and learn. So my first question for those of you here is, how should the district balance the diverse infrastructure needs of different schools and even different districts?
We need to start with the schools that are costing us the most money to maintain. We have a number of schools that are limping along, and we've been spending a bunch of money trying to keep them limping along. If we start with the schools that are costing the most money to maintain, we fix those schools, then we have that maintenance money that was being wasted to then use on the next school and the next school and the next school.
The very first thing we need to do is to close the unsafe and dangerous schools and move on to the next ones. We also need to reevaluate the snapshot, the MGT. As you mentioned, it was finished in 2020, and the only time before that it was ever done was when the schools were being integrated with the city and county schools. So with the pandemic and with the schools that have changed, we need to have a new snapshot to make sure we are spending in the right place and growing the way that we need to.
Can I clarify something?
Yeah,
Okay.
please.
First, we did not build a new CSLA. So the CSLA is not a new building. It is in a renovation and an addition. So I want to make sure that's clear so people understand that we did not build a brand new magnet school. No one on the board was comfortable with building a brand new magnet school, which is why it has taken CSLA as long as it has to get a safer structure. So I just want to clarify that because I don't want to mislead people. Second to that, And that was the closure of Lakeside, which was on the MGT study, where they did tell us that based on the capacity in the current state of Lakeside with the portables, that it wasn't the safest environment. And I did struggle with that because Lakeside was a District 5 school. And the people of District 5 could not understand. And I really honestly couldn't wrap my mind around closing a school at that time. But even after that, in closing the school, we were able to still provide an elementary school in that district. The students at Lakeside were allowed the opportunity, the magnet students were allowed the opportunity to remain there when the magnet school came back, or to select another magnet. So it was kind of a touch and go. But nevertheless, I just wanted to clarify that, just so people understand what that looks like. But nevertheless, the infrastructure issues that we have in Hamilton County schools were long before I was probably even old enough to know what the word decision meant. And I am 41 years old. So when the school system, the city school system, the city residents voted in the referendum to go out of the school business, and the county schools system had to consume the city schools, because that's what you have to do when you're the county over the municipality. People say integrate, merger. That never really truly happened. I'm born and raised here, third generation resident of Hamilton County in the city of Chattanooga. A true merger never happened. It was always a them and an us, a county and a city school system, which is why your city schools have the most infrastructure issues and concerns, because the attention was always in another place.
Yeah.
Let's just be very candid and transparent about that.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, as the previous boards began to address those issues, they followed the growth. They followed the recommendation of planning commissions from the county and the city, and they followed the growth. And they were trying to address the growth. And in doing that, it became an inequitable situation for the students who were not in the growth areas. So that's what they thought they were doing to address those issues. The last 8 years that I've been on the board, I know we would normally prioritize and try to vote, but if you ever see the stack of infrastructure needs, I don't even know if they came onto the board and I remained, another board. I don't know how long it's going to take to fix what has not been addressed for so long. We probably will be grandparents and great grandparents. I'm just going to be very honest, unless the citizens of Hamilton County implore upon those that are the funding body that they are okay with whatever funding situation they come up with to do that for our children. But nevertheless, I will say with the MGT study, that it was a recommendation. We did take those recommendations along with what we had already committed to the community to do in that first year after the study, and address those things, which is why CSLA was addressed first, Harrison was addressed first, Middle Valley, certain schools were addressed first, because we had already committed to Hamilton County, the residents of Hamilton County, that we would address those issues. And so you have to follow through in fidelity to what you commit to. From that point forward, we then were having discussions about what would be next steps. Of course, COVID hit, and now we're back in the same thing. So we do need to step back and probably reevaluate. I wouldn't say we probably need to do a whole nother MGT study, because truth of the matter is we're probably not as far away from where we were in 2019 anyway. But there are some things that have occurred since that time, but you do have to prioritize, because the issues are so steep, and they range from ADA compliance to mold, to bathrooms, to buildings, to additions. It's just such a gamut. They run the gamut. So you have to prioritize, and you have to, I personally feel like the board will have to address areas that are going to make some other areas of Hamilton County uncomfortable, because they're used to always getting the support and getting what they need. And so, as I say all the time, it's now time that we make those that have been comfortable a little uncomfortable or content for a while you address those that have been uncomfortable for a long time. Yeah. But you have to prioritize.
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate the texture and the nuance that you added to this very long crisis issue that we have. Where do you all see opportunities in infrastructure development moving forward? We heard a little bit of the complexities and how big this issue is, but where do you guys see some opportunities for infrastructure development moving forward? Yeah.
I think opportunities are that we as a community are really going to have to come to terms with our passion for bricks, and I hate to say it that way. But there are some communities that have become institutionalized to buildings because that's what they know, that's where their grandma went to school, that's where they went to school, that's where their mama went to school, their father was a teacher there, so forth and so on. But we do have a lot of buildings in Hamilton County in comparison to other metropolitan and progressive cities. And so we are going to have to really have some tough community conversations on what that looks like moving forward so that we are able to provide the best learning environments aesthetically and academically for our children. Does that mean getting rid of some buildings? Probably so. Does that mean combining some schools like we did at Harrison? So Harrison Elementary, Lakeside, and Hillcrest all in one area, the same as they did with Middle Valley from Falling Water and Gaines. So what does that look like? But it's going to take some courageous conversations in our community and the ability and us being able to say, hey, it's okay if we don't have 3 schools within a 2-mile radius. Because in some areas it's like that. And we were gonna have to say, that's okay. It's okay if the school isn't right in my backyard anymore. We're also going to have to look at some innovative ways to do that and know that some of our buildings may be able to be kept, but you're going to have to do some additions to them. And then we have to look at some ways to do that, because I will tell you, in general funding at Hamilton County Schools right now, we do not have the money to address $56 billion, nor $9 million to even do to close and get rid of buildings. We just don't have the money to do that. And so we're going to have to figure out what that looks like. And our funding bodies are going to have to support that. And our community is going to have to support that. And we're going to have to realize that funding our schools and doing what is right for our children doesn't always mean that our property taxes go up. So we have to understand that there are other ways to financially do what we need to do to get our schools where we need to get them, be it academically or aesthetically. And there are a gamut of ways to do that. But what you hear in the political realm of the world is that when you hear about funding for schools, you hear taxes. Well, that's not always the case. That's not always the case. Chattanooga is growing. Companies are coming here, and I mean, Airbnbs are wanting to be. I mean, I feel like there's an obligation when you want to be in our county. You have to be able to commit to the county. Like, a lot of people come in and make money out of Hamilton County and Chattanooga, and they swim up out of here, and we're left with the ramifications of it, and nothing is better for us. And so I do think that we just have to be very innovative in how we fund those things and how we find the funding for those things.
Thank you. So to repeat the question that you said, where do I see opportunities in infrastructure? And the very short answer is everywhere. It's as small and as big as you want to make it. I've been reaching out to the principals that are in District 6, and I've been trying to help with little projects and big projects. There's paint on the floor at Rivermont that needs to come up and be fixed in order for the kids to learn in that classroom. You know, we all have heard the terrible stories at Tyner of the roof falling down around them. As a room parent at my children's school, I helped move all of the bookshelves off on the last day so that we could pull up carpet that's expected to have asbestos glue in it. It never stops. To go back to the point of the MGT and the snapshot, yes, we need to prioritize it, but as I've just mentioned, what is that? You need to make sure that you're not just prioritizing this school you need to make sure that you're figuring out the absolute needs and catering those needs to the children and the educators in that building to make sure that we are creating the safest and best learning environment for the children. So again, it's a multifaceted thing, but it's, as Karitsa said, we don't need to kick the can down the road anymore. We need to figure out a plan of how to make the schools safe and able to learn in, and dedicate ourselves as a community to wanting to do that and make the schools better for the children.
In terms of infrastructure needs, I think that we need to work on making sure our buildings are healthy and safe. And we should be using the most modern technology to be able to do that. One example of that is LEED certification. why not make our schools state of the art if we can? Karitsa was talking about big companies coming into our town. We have a lot. I know that CSAS has an agreement with Volkswagen. We have big companies coming in. Why can't they help us if funding is an issue? Because funding is a huge issue. We might be able to get some help from those companies to do that. But I would like to see great innovation in our schools.
Yeah, thank you. Since the County Commission is the funding body for the school system, how do you plan to build relationships with the county commissioners and your district colleague in particular? How do you plan or currently to advocate for funding to support the recommended infrastructure needs?
Sorry, caught me off guard there. So I currently in District 6, I have an incumbent County Commissioner, David Sharp. I have been in constant contact with him since long before I planned to run for school board because that's what you need to do. You need to have communication and dialogue with your elected officials, hold them accountable for what they've voted on and what they stand for, and make sure that they know that you're engaged in your community and want to help them to get to the right choices. So that dialogue's already there with city council, with all of the elected officials that currently represent me at my home address, and it's not something that would stop. Open communication is the way to govern correctly. You are a representative of the people, as is every other person that's been elected. So you need to have those open lines of communication.
Creating bridges between different groups of people is something that I've done my whole adult life. I'm a sign language interpreter by day, and as a disability advocate, I've spent lots of time in lots of different rooms doing that. I've also done a great deal of interfaith work, so I don't have any worries about being able to talk to people. They generally like me, even if we disagree. I think that it is patriotic to ask for funding for public schools. I have absolutely no problem talking to my fellow patriots who ran for government, who care deeply about the people and families and children, especially in Hamilton County, our future, frankly. I have no problem asking for additional funding. Our kids deserve it. It's been far too long, as Karitsa said, that we have been trying hard to get a ton of things done with not nearly enough resources. And I look forward to the opportunity to work with my county commission to make that happen.
Thanks. You got some experience here, right?
So the obvious question is that you're going to work well with others, right? That's what we're taught to do. The reality is that's not always the case. And you can attempt to do that, and a relationship goes both ways, right? Dialogue is two people. And so ideally, yes, you would have a communication, you would build a relationship with your direct district representative and your commissioner. But aside from doing that, and even if, and you may be successful, you may not. I've had the experience both ways because I've had two different commissioners that I've worked with. Mm-hmm. So you may be successful, you may not. However, you have to go a step beyond to build relationships and rapport with the other 8 commissioners. Because even if you have the support of your commissioner, just as on the board, being a board member, you do the same thing with your board peers, because ultimately you need 5 votes to get anything passed. And now with 11 people on the board and or the commission, you're going to need 6 votes to get anything passed. And so while you all may have differences in opinions or values, morals and ethics, or even party beliefs, what I feel we all typically have in common is that we want to do what is right for children And if you can't find 9 who consistently want to do what's right for children, you work hard to try to find 6 who want to do what is right for children. Now, I should say, or 5. But you do have to build rapport with people, with the other representatives aside from district leader, and you have to find that commonality to get them to understand your why for what you're needing their support on. So it goes to me a little bit, oh yeah, we do want to get along, because you do. That's your prayer. But it doesn't always go that way. So then you have to go beyond that and kind of meet them where they are to show them why for one of us, it might be what is just right for kids morally or ethically. For some of them, you have to show them why it's economically sound for Hamilton County to do what you need to do, because what's morally right doesn't often faze them as much as what the economic sound of the county is.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. We're going to move on to our second topic, which is educational equity plan. In March 2021, the Hamilton County Board of Education unanimously passed the educational equity policy as a commitment to the district's belief that all students should be afforded the resources and support to thrive. Upon the issuance of this policy, the board requested an educational equity plan to help move Hamilton County schools and our historically undeserved student groups forward. The 3-year plan outlined in the document is based on calls from the Tennessee Department of Education to improve 8 specific areas: reduce disproportionate suspensions and expulsion rates, embed cultural competency in school practices, allocate resources equitably, decrease chronic absenteeism, provide equitable access to effective teachers, recruit and retain a diverse teaching force, increase early post-secondary opportunities, and to partner with community allies. So the first question is, as a representative from a particular school board district, how do you prioritize these issues, because there's 8 of them, across schools and throughout the school district as a whole?
So when I sat down to run, I listed my priorities. And my priorities include resources and safety. And the resources is broken up into human resources, our educators, and the buildings. We've talked at length already about the buildings. So I sat down with the points that are listed here and circled and color-coded and went to which one goes to which. And all of those fall under resources, quite literally. So when we address the buildings that our students are learning in, and when we address making sure that we have the proper educators there, not just the right amount of teachers, but the right people in the positions, making sure that we have making sure that we have the proper guidance counselors, making sure that we have the proper teacher there that's helping us to keep the schools safe, then we're going to reduce the disproportionate suspension and expulsion rates. Then we're going to decrease chronic absenteeism. When we've got the embedded school practices and allocate resources equitably, that's what I was talking about before when we needed to make the snapshot more diverse and make sure that we were looking at it in what the actual school needs, not just a peanut butter spread of this is fix it. We need to make sure that we're looking for what that school needs to make it more prosperous and make sure that we're getting the people an equitable learning environment. So again, going back to my main points, you can't just rank them. You need to say where you're going with them, and so they all are.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I think I want to talk about the thing that I think is the most important, because we could get in the weeds here trying to talk about, all 8 of them. I think that the greatest crisis that we have right now is recruiting and retaining a diverse teacher workforce, whatever it said. Yeah, I worked in Hamilton County schools. I have a lot of friends that are teachers. I have a degree in education. We need to pay our teachers thriving wages, commiserate with professionals who have attended 4, 5, and 6 years of post-secondary education. We need to respect them by allowing them to have a say in their own curriculum. We need to offer them competitive benefits packages that also show that we believe that they are professionals who have attended many years of university training to know exactly what they're doing. I did that. I have a degree in education. It's not just coloring. It is very rigorous and very focused on pedagogy and what works best for many children and classes and all kinds of things. These people are professionals, and I have seen that they are so often disrespected, highly educated and very disrespected. And so I know we're losing teachers. I know we have a lot of open job offers right now, in Hamilton County. Talk is cheap. We need to be competitive. We need to make sure that teachers feel respected and supported by the administration. We need to make sure that they are being compensated for the incredibly challenging work that they do. And so many of them do it with the greatest amount of love and the greatest amount of care. I can't say enough about teachers. That's definitely the greatest issue right now for me.
Yeah, thank you.
So the best way to prioritize it is to call it what it is and quit talking about an elephant in the room like we don't know what's going on, right? So we know that in Hamilton County, we lack upward mobility for our residents. Mm-hmm. And when you lack upward mobility for your residents, it dwindles down into their homes. Children are products of their environment. And not every home and the adults in that home know how to deal with the lack of upward mobility. So one, the issue becomes bigger than just the school system. So I would say, first of all, in prioritizing, we have to, they all are one and the same. When you look at the issues that are in the equity plan from the Tennessee playbook, the state of Tennessee's playbook, they all go back to whole child, whole family strategies. And whole child and whole family strategies are not just school board issues. They are county commission issues. They are city council issues. They are state legislature issues, and federal legislature issues. And we all have to work together, all levels of government, to ensure that at every level we're advocating for what our families and students need in Hamilton County. So we all play a part in that big puzzle. So you can't really prioritize one over the other because they all, if you look at them, they all fit in together, right? So chronic absenteeism, expulsions and suspensions, all of those things fall into, the whys of why children are not present in school. We know at elementary ages, a kindergartner can't tell you they don't want to go to school. A parent makes that decision. So you have to look at what all that looks like. So one, that's a big issue. Second to that, a lot of the things that are going on in our schools as it relates to the equity playbook, once again, go beyond us. So the equity plan that Hamilton County, the policy that we created finally, after all of these years, the administration came to us as a board and presented the draft of the plan. Dr. Drake and Dr. Robertson and Dr. Stewart and their team, they came and presented that to us as a board. And the night that they presented that to us, the final rough draft to us as a board, some of the board wasn't even there, which indicates to you if it was a priority for them or not, to me, unless there was just something else going on. And things happen, so I get that. However, we did have a discussion with them that night, those of us that were present, about going back and looking at some specific things within the Tennessee playbook that they could do, but also that we as a board can be held accountable for supporting them in doing. So for me, the ultimate way to prioritize this is that the board has to make equity a priority in the work that we do as a board. because you cannot, and I do not believe in being a leader and asking something of people that I work with and alongside to do that I am not willing to do. And until the 9 of us collectively are able to say, hey, we are willing to do the work, just like we're asking you to do the work and we're asking our community to do the work, then you're never going to get there. So you're never going to be able to prioritize this if the board cannot make equity a genuine priority. Because equity is like a sling thing now, right? I mean, you know, everybody's saying equity. It's the word of the day. Like on Sesame Street, the word of the day. It's the word of the day. But until you actually commit to it, and so we have work to do as a board collectively. Individually, a lot of us are committed, but we have work as a board collectively before we can ever even begin to break down the silos and the work that needs to be done for the equity plan and the playbook.
Yeah.
That's just my take on that.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for that. We have a question for one of our co-sponsors, the Chattanooga Aquatic Project and Personal Development. And their question is, recently, Senator Bo Watson unveiled the much anticipated $1 billion TISA plan, Tennessee Investment for Student Achievement. How can parents, students, and teachers be assured that there will be equitable distribution of funding and resources across all Hamilton County schools, regardless of the districts they are located in?
Well, that's a question for Senator Watson. Honestly, I'm just going to say that because the money has to make it to Hamilton County first. And we know that even like with the basic education plan, the BEP plan, it was a law that was put into place that they never fully funded. So one, you got to make sure that the state legislature fully funds TISA. But if they fully fund TISA, we have no choice in Hamilton County to do anything other than be equitable with it because it's like student-based budgeting. And so you take on student per student need, right? If you all ever paid attention, I don't know if y'all paid attention to TISA, but it's about student need. And so it's per pupil expenditure. And I don't know about y'all, but I'm pretty sure the 3 of us live 3 different ways. Our lives calls for 3 different types of budgets. And so when you have to address that, you have no choice but to be equitable in it because the truth of the matter is your home may need more than my home, right? That's just the reality. That's scary for some people in our community because it removes the scales that have been placed on our eyes for so long, or some of our eyes for so long, but you have no other choice but to, at the Hamilton County level, but to be equitable. But you got to make sure that the money gets here first. So ultimately, I would say that question really should be going to Senator Watson, but I would say if I was on the board and I'm still on the board, when we get the money, I'll make sure, and my vote will go to make sure that it's done that way because I'm a very big supporter of student-based budgeting and per pupil expenditures because there are different needs per student and per household and even per school.
Yeah.
I have to say, first, I couldn't agree with you more because the way that it's written, we've all looked at it, and the budgeting for it, as you mentioned, isn't long-term. It doesn't say that. So as you said, it is absolutely a higher than us question to begin with, but after that fact, it is great that it will be forced to be helpful for every child at every school. And then furthermore, just to kind of continue down that road, we need to make sure that, I lost the exact thought, sorry. So we've got it in place. We need to make sure that on the board, should you all choose to vote for me, that we are the loudest voice in the room. You have to be the loud voice because you're the person elected. You are the voice of the people and you need to be the voice of the people. So if elected to the board, I will make sure to be, as Karitsa mentioned, loud and making sure that the money is going to the right places to be as equitable as possible.
I think in answering this question, first of all, the money has to make it to Hamilton County, like you said. Something that I'm thinking about is fairness versus equity. It would be fair to give, every child $1. It would be equitable to give children with greater need more dollars. We want to be sure that we're not so focused on fairness that we forget about equity. We have schools that simply have a greater need than other schools. We have students, you know, I worked with the Deaf and Hard of Hearing program in Hickson. Those students need more support. We have students with mental health diagnoses that need more support. We have students with less support at home that need more support. So I just want us to really keep in mind the difference between fairness and equity, because what is fair is oftentimes not equitable.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm going to hand it off. We have a couple more questions from our co-sponsors, and Grace Episcopal has a question. I'm going to hand it off to them.
You can use mine. Oh, yeah, I'll use my teacher aids. Absolutely. Hi. Ooh, yes. I'm Cindy Davidson, and I'm from Grace Episcopal. And Grace is a community that's a heart of Chattanooga that cares about justice, equity, and the care of creation. Our congregation includes Hamilton County students, educators, parents, and family members. Whenever we baptize somebody in our community, every one of us commits ourselves to strive for justice and peace and to respect the dignity of every human being. For us at Grace, that means working to build a world in which every student has the opportunity to learn and grow in a safe and supportive environment.
Good evening. My name is Erica Kelly. I'm also at Grace Episcopal and with the Public Education Foundation, where I work with the teacher residency, and we hope to bring more teachers, specifically diverse teachers, to Chattanooga and to Hamilton County schools. So my question is kind of leaning into something that was already brought up, and that is, how does the district move towards recruiting, developing, and retaining a diverse teacher force?
I'll answer first. Honestly, to answer you as of today, I'm brand new in politics, but I do know quite a bit about education as a mom and as a person with a degree in it and a former employee. I don't know. I'm feeling really worried about that. We have a lot of teachers that are leaving. The dream is diversity. I want every child to have teachers, coaches, administrators in their school that look like them, that are representative of their culture, representative of their lives. I desperately want that. We're losing white female teachers because we are not paying them enough and not respecting them enough. I said white female just because that's the stereotypical teacher with a lack of diversity. I wish I had a better answer for you, but right now I just feel so worried about that. Like, I'm worried with you. I want to see a whole lot of changes that would inspire that.
At the beginning, I will also say that I just agree that there always needs to be the diversity so that your children are learning in the environment that they'll be practicing in. They need to be in what the world looks like around them, and that is a diverse world. One of the great things, I brought this card on purpose because I knew there'd be a little bit of this question. I had the opportunity to meet the Strategic Partnerships Coordinator at the Red Bank Community Fair. And this is a program with Hamilton County Schools that helps to identify people in the school system who want to become teachers, help get them to that goal, and retain them in Hamilton County. If we keep people from the county teaching in the county, we start making the county look like the county, look like the diversity that we have. That's a very roundabout way to say it, but it's exactly right. If we can hold on to our own, we will make the diversity that we already have at Chattanooga in our school system. So this is a great program.
Well, one, we need to pay more. Just going to be very honest. I'm a proud graduate of Alabama A&M University, one of the top HBCUs in the Southeast, with a very well-performing education program. And I have spoken with students at Alabama A&M that are getting ready to enter into the workforce. I've talked to people in other universities, HBCUs, other teachers of color, Black and brown, other races and ethnicities. And the issue is that why would I come to Chattanooga and work when I can go to Nashville and make this amount of money? And it's more to do in Nashville. And Nashville is reflective of the living culture that I want to have as well. Why would I do that? And I can go to Atlanta or any of its municipalities and make this amount of money, and it looks like a melting pot. Why would I do that? And I can go to DC or Charlotte or Birmingham or Florida or Dallas or Fort Worth or Chicago or wherever, St. Louis, and the city looks like what is presented to me. So what we have, one, is a pay issue, because we don't, and we're working on that. We are working on that, but that costs money too. But the pay is an issue. Second to that is, even when you are able to get people of diverse backgrounds, races, creeds, and colors to come to Chattanooga, be it in the teaching profession, the engineering profession, the banking profession, entrepreneurial profession, whomever, they don't stay because the picture of Chattanooga that they're painted and given to encourage them to come here is not what we have. So people don't stay in Chattanooga that are from diverse backgrounds, because when you get here, the nightlife doesn't look like what you told me it was going to look like. The churches don't look like what you told me it was going to look like. The neighborhoods don't look like what you told me it was going to look like. Our mall is awful. Have you ever been shopping in our mall? Like, the shopping options are not what you can get in Atlanta or Nashville or Birmingham or Huntsville or Knoxville even. I mean, so we as a county have work to do as a county. Like, a lot of this stuff is school related, but we kind of inherit issues because we as a community have not come to terms that we're not the Charlotte that we want to be. And I always use that analogy, like, we want to be Charlotte, but we still a little Mayberry-ish, okay? Because we want to have this small town mentality in a progressive city that's growing whether we want it to grow or not, and in a county that's growing whether we want it to grow or not. And so we have to move with the times. And so in moving with the times, everything has to look like and present itself and be genuine and authentic in what the school system is selling. Like, come to Chattanooga, we're the best, the scenic city of the South, and we are. Best midtown city, best city. I mean, we are all of those things for some people, not for everyone. And so even if you have a degree or degrees or licenses or certifications, you get here, and because you have all of that, you have common sense to know that what was sold to you is not as such. So I say all that to say there is work to do within Hamilton County Schools. Pay, student accountability for behavior, parent accountability for behavior, and support, and teachers just being able. What I hear when teachers leave is they just want to teach. But a lot of things that they have to do are not just Hamilton County mandated, but a lot of things we have to ask them to do testing wise is state mandate, federal mandate. So, we just doing what the state is telling us to do. So once again, that's why we have to all work together to say, hey, can y'all talk to the people up in Nashville? This is really not what we're trying to do. But those are the biggest things: student accountability for behaviors, parent accountability for holding the students accountable for their behaviors, and then pay are big issues that we have to fix. And ultimately, as a community, we have to make Chattanooga and Hamilton County and all the other municipalities truly the best place to live for all people. So that when people come here, because a lot of people are leaving too. Let's be honest. Homegrown Hamilton County residents are leaving because it's not what people want it to be in 2022. So we have some work to do just as a community.
Yeah. Thank you. Do Unified Ed, we have a question from Unified Ed. Yeah.
Hey, how are you all? Thank you for being here. And thank you, sorry guys, in our partnership with Caleb. We really appreciate it. My name's Krista Manarino, and I'm representing Unified Ed tonight. we're happy to be a partner. And at Unify Ed, we believe that every Hamilton County child deserves a quality education, no matter what their background, their skin color, or their zip code. And we do this through advocacy, education, and organizing. We really do look forward to the next election period in August, and we want to help people know like what their district is. So if you need to know that information, please go to our website at unify-ed.org to find out, because some of you may have a little change, and we have a new district in District 11. So here's my question. As a school board member, how can you help the school administration meet its goals and close the opportunity gaps to make sure all Hamilton County students are thriving?
What's the you said the question was, how can we help the administration in the building or at? Okay. Autonomy, continue to allow them autonomy. I had a teacher that used to always teach us, will tell us that it's in certain instances when advocating for what you believed in, it's often better to ask for forgiveness rather than permission, right? If you notice, what I've noticed in a lot of our schools across the county is that the principals who are who do that, I should say, and use full autonomy, often are able to help our children achieve what you just stated there. Now, not to say that those who don't, but I do think autonomy is key. So you can't ask someone to be a leader and then micromanage them, right? I don't, and I'm not, let me say this, I'm not saying that is currently the case or has been the case. I think there was a culture in Hamilton County schools where that was the case. And prior to the last three or four superintendents that I've had the privilege of working with, well, 3 and then an interim, I have seen that change. But what I know is that learned behavior has to be unlearned, right? And so in a lot of buildings, there's still that, oh, well, I'm not sure if I can say that. Or even talking to me as a school board member, like they're not really sure. And I'm like, I'm just here to advocate for you. But there's a level there sometimes where they think, well, I don't know if I should say that. Oh, I don't know if I should do that. Or, and I'm like, I'm not your boss. The superintendent's your boss. Like I have one employee. But I think autonomy is the key to doing that, because every community is different. Every school community is different. Every school community's needs, and what I mean by school community needs is the community within that building. Those children, every child, every set of children in every building have a different need based on what the community looks like. And I think administration having the autonomy to do what they feel is best for their student body and the families that come along with that, and the teachers that come along with that, the coaches, the paraprofessionals, the custodial, everything that goes into their building. I think that is key within legal boundaries and within school board, Hamilton County policy. But I think having the autonomy to be a professional, to use the knowledge and the skill set that you have to change the lives of children and their educational trajectories is the best way to do that. Autonomy is the key for that. Yeah.
So the best resources, the best way to help the administrators, I've had a long career in restaurant management and sales. And when I have a team working with me that is compensated in a way that they feel like they are a valued member of the team, they always work better, they work harder, and they have more dedication to what we're doing. So if we are paying our teachers a living wage at least, and then making sure that they're happy, we just immediately start better. After that, I've spoken to teachers at the schools. Actually, my sister is a 4th grade teacher in Virginia to get a different perspective as well. And it starts there, and then it's going with the tools. So we're talking about the 3 priorities I said before: the resources of human resources, making sure that you're compensating them at a living wage, making sure that once you have that done, you're making sure to have the right teachers in the building. You need to have a restorative practices person to make sure that we're working on the disciplinary aspects of the school system, to make sure that then we're doing my third priority of safety in the schools. That's as essential as making sure that we're paying the teachers a living wage, that they feel safe in the school that they're teaching in. The board last week just passed extra precautions and safety measures in our current terrible situation of having to plan for the potential of a school shooting. So making sure that they're safe, and then finally coming back again to resources of making sure that that building that they're finally getting paid correctly isn't falling down around them.
I think administration, gosh, I'm just kind of making me want to get real, Karitsa. Okay, I know, but like, I'm trying to figure out how to say this. Okay, so we currently have, from my experience, a very vocal minority of people who are questioning literally everything public school professionals do. Because of that, I think that, and nobody got into public education to make enemies. and most of the people that get into education are warm-hearted people that want to make a difference, empathetic people that have the best of intentions. And I think we're in a situation now where definitely teachers, and I imagine administrators, are afraid to kind of lay down the law, afraid to set boundaries in some ways, because they don't want an angry parent in their office. They don't want somebody slamming their school or their reputation on social media. And I think that families deserve to be able to trust the professionals at their neighborhood school. I think the way that we build that is with accountability. I think that those administrators, part of being a boss, an administrator is a boss at the school. Part of being a boss is being a person who, with that, you take on greater responsibility. So you might have to be the person that has to deal with the angry parent because you decided to expel a child or put a child in ISS because they're, acting in a way that and I'm realizing that these answers that we're giving are kind of going into the next topic we're going to discuss. So I won't talk for too long about this, but I think that the best way that we can support administration is to encourage them to follow and implement the discipline policy that is already in place, rather than I'm hearing from teachers that they send their kid to, they try their best to deal with their behavior issue in class, then it doesn't work. They determine that the child needs to go to the principal's office. They go to the principal's office, they get a slap on the wrist, maybe a bunch of, some time to tell some jokes with the office staff, a piece of candy, and get sent back to class. That doesn't support teachers, and ultimately it makes for a more dangerous school environment and a more chaotic school environment for the administration as well. So I think administration would be more supported by implementing what's currently in place, and then ultimately revising what is currently in place, because I think it's lacking.
Yes, thank you. We have one more question.
Hello, my name is Carly Richardson, and I am representing Voces en la Comunidad, which is Voices in the Community. And we aim to advocate for and empower newcomers, students, and families in Hamilton County. So I thank you so much for speaking with us tonight. My question is, in the last 2 years, the pandemic has made us aware of the gaps that exist for many of our students not only academically, but within our existing social and economic structures. Many of our students are facing unmet mental health and medical needs, a lack of food or utilities in their homes, or even a place to call home. If elected, what do you see as the role of the school board in supporting the needs of the whole child and ensuring that all children in Hamilton County schools thrive and experience a future without limits?
So my master's degree is in mental health counseling. So this is a issue that is near and dear to my heart. I mean, it all comes back to funding. I have no problem saying that we need a tremendous amount of funding for schools. I don't even understand why this is something that we have to beg for, ask nicely about, promise not to raise taxes about, etc. It is patriotic to fund these things, and why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we want to make sure that our kids have literally everything they need? I truly don't understand it. So when I speak with guidance counselors, they are across the board, all the ones that I have spoken to, inundated with schedule changes and administrative things like that. So I would like to see administrative positions created so that those types of things could be taken care of by administrative assistants rather than guidance counselors. I'd also like to see a greater amount of guidance counselors, mental health workers, social workers in schools helping kids. The different things that you mentioned, there's just such need. There's such need even pre-COVID. It was only exacerbated by COVID. These things should not and must not all just fall on teachers. Teachers are not mental health professionals. They're not parents. They're not nurses. We need to have mental health professionals and parents and nurses in the schools so that teachers can do what they are great at, which is teach. I hope I answered your question. Okay.
So I've mentioned a few times how I'm saying resources, and the human resources is the best way to answer this question there, to make sure that we have the right teachers in place. And as Jenn just said, not just the second grade teacher. It shouldn't fall on his or her shoulders to be the person that's having to make sure we find out what needs this one child may need at the cost of the whole class. There needs to be the people in place in the different schools to be able to be that person that identifies the needs in the child and helps to get it there. If we're truly, as a school system, trying to get children to reach their potential, whether that be the next doctor, the next plumber, the next contractor, whatever is their potential to help our community, we can't let them fall by the wayside over something as simple as getting breakfast. We need to be able to identify that need and furthermore, make sure that we have the proper procedures in place to identify it all over the summer and find that help so that we can help to create the home life that they need to succeed in the school life. As a community, our fellow community members deserve our help just as much as each one of the children in Hamilton counties deserves our help.
So I'm a social worker, 17 years as a master's level social worker, primarily working in the pediatric healthcare arena, both mental health and physical health. And I've worked, honestly, the gamut from prenatal to geriatric to end of life care. What I know to be true from my pediatric medical social work experience is that the child is just a piece of the puzzle. We have to look at everything through a whole child, whole family lens, because that child is a part of a family unit. May not be the ideal American dream, mama dog, 2.5 kids, picket fence, but that child comes from a family unit that's unique to them. So one, we have to be able to make sure that we're looking through the lens of a whole child situation. Second to that is within the last, I would say, 6 years or so. Actually, I advocated for community schools coming in 2014 because I felt like as a social worker, community school model is the best case management model you can put into a school system, right? Wraparound services, you're going to provide supports for not only the child, but the family, the grandma, all kind of levels of home environments. And so most recently, within the last 6 years, community school models have been implemented in Hamilton County schools. It started out at Red Bank High School. They have the hub at Red Bank High School. I was a part of that brainstorming committee. I remember going to Red Bank High School, Unified Ed. At that time, Elizabeth Cruz was over Unified Ed, Benwood Foundation, McKenzie Foundation, Community Foundation. Elaine Harper was the principal there at that time. But I remember meeting, and that started there. Of course, in other schools around Hamilton County, they were already kind of doing their Archenai Middle School was already doing some of that. Dr. Tiffany Irvin, who is now going to Tyner, had an amazing self-created example, community-created example of that in her school. But what we know is that in order for all children to thrive and succeed, that you have to be able to wrap all kinds of supports around them. Most recently, Mayor Kelly, when he came into office, provided funding to Hamilton County, provided funding through city services for Community Forward program, which put 7 community school coordinators in the 7 Midtown schools in Hamilton County, which are the 7 schools, 5 of which were on a priority list. 1 came off of the list. The other schools that were there are at risk for being on priority, but put wraparound services and support in those buildings to help those children. What you know in those families, what you know is that you have to put things in place. So in order to continue to do that, I will continue to advocate for that type of model in all schools, because what I know as a social worker is that the same issue that a child is having growing up in College Hill Courts in the West Side is the same issue that a child is having in North Hamilton County or in Birchwood or Far East Appleton going to, it's happening across Hamilton County. The only difference is it's more grass and green and trees in the rural areas, right? That's rural social work 101. Urban social work, concrete. That's the only difference. We found that to be true when COVID hit. There was a digital divide, and we knew there was a digital divide. Some of us did. But it became evident to everyone that there was a digital divide across Hamilton County when we had to make sure that children could go into their homes and still continue to learn. So what we have to do is continue to advocate and support community schools, wraparound supports, interventionists, behavior specialists, social workers, nurses, counselors, truancy officers, college and career access advisors to be line items in a budget, not just what Dr. Robertson and his team can recommend to us because I'm sorry, Justin, but because he probably feels like it's safe enough to get 5 votes, right? Because he advocates, but you got to have 5 votes. But we have to do what is right as a board and be real with ourselves and know that all children, every household has a need. I just sit here and talk, and I forgive me for this, Ben. I just sat here and talked with Ben. He told me he had out-of-town relatives at his home. He has a nephew with exceptional education needs. He's an entrepreneur. His children attend Normal Park, but he has a nephew with exceptional education needs. I have a cousin with exceptional education needs. It don't look one socioeconomic background or color, or it doesn't look that way. Every child in Hamilton County needs some type of wraparound service. Whether you're a new mom that's transplanted to this city because your husband got a job in Volkswagen and you about to have a baby and you don't know who the nearest pediatrician is to you. Mm-hmm. The nearest child care center is to you. There's all kinds of needs. And so we have to be sure that we advocate as a board, and as a board member, I will work to continue to advocate to make those items sustainable with Hamilton County budget funds, and ask other municipalities to join Mayor Kelly, other mayors, East Ridge, Red Bank, Signal Mountain, Collegedale, whomever, to join Mayor Kelly in his efforts to continue to support the students of Hamilton County. Because even though you live in Collegedale, or even though you live in Red Bank or East Ridge, you're still a part of Hamilton County. And just like the city of Chattanooga allocated funds, the city of East Ridge can, for wraparound services, for safety, law enforcement. I tell the story and I'm going to be quiet. I tell the story all the time. If every municipality went out of business today, guess where we would live? What would your address say?
Still say the same.
But what would it say? It wouldn't say Chattanooga, would it? What would it say?
It would say Hamilton County.
Right. It would say Oak Street, Hamilton County, Tennessee. It's everybody's responsibility. It's not just one person's responsibility. But my answer is that everything that we do when we know to be right for children in those positions don't need to go through title funds, because you can use title funds for other things if it was a line item. You don't have to choose. You don't have to use SIG funds. You don't have to use ARP funds. You don't have to use ESSER funds. We make them line items. And then when you get extra money, you're able to support other things. Yeah. Because you made them line items. Don't choose to make them line items when it affects your neighborhood. Because guess what? My pastors always say this: it might not be happening at your house today, but that blessing or that trial is coming right down the street. It could be you next, but by the grace of God. So you have to be able to do what is right for all children at all times. And the best way to do that is to put things in a line item that you know are going to be right for children.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Is the facilitator allowed to like clap and snap? Yes, thank you to our co-sponsors for those really important questions. We're going to move on to our last topic tonight. I hope you guys are still hanging in there online. We thank you guys for being here. And this is about discipline policies. Over the period from 2014 to 2018, Hamilton County Schools had the highest rate of referrals to the juvenile court of any system in the state. Although Hamilton County has shown some decrease in these rates, it continues to be identified by the state as being significantly disproportionate in its discipline response to Black students. Economically disadvantaged students and students with disabilities are also disproportionately suspended and expelled. The Tennessee Department of Education's Leaders for Equity Playbook asked for districts to show improvement in 8 areas, the first of which is a reduction of disproportionate suspension and expulsion rates. The reduction of disproportionate suspension and expulsions is the first area targeted for action by the Educational Equity Plan. According to the district's draft equity plan, disciplinary data, sorry guys, indicates that administrators and school leaders formalized the Code of Acceptable Behavior in 2018 with equal consequences but not equitable solutions, and potentially become a factor in increased discipline responses. So for Caleb's part, we want to see policies promoted that interrupt the school to prison pipeline rather than facilitate it, and we want to encourage real accountability in the classroom. To that end, last year, we supported a whole school implementation of restorative practices training in support of Orchard Knob Elementary School. We'd like to briefly highlight what happened.
Children that live in high poverty areas, they see things like high crime. We have kids who have actually seen individuals shot or have to deal with homelessness, lack of resources. Well, all of those things impact the student. It impacts their brain. I know we're in the business of educating children with the understanding that we have to make sure that their needs are met. That's one of the reasons why we are participating in the restorative practice training, so that way it will help us, train us on how to give those supports to our students. And then once that occurs, then you'll start seeing it happening in their families. And so therefore it's impacting the community.
It was so powerful to me because I've seen conflict done wrong so much of my life. Like, it's so easy to push punishments. It's so easy to look down upon other people. But when you realize that there's reason behind their actions, and if we never teach them how to reshape that or reform that or change those processes, then we're not going to set them up to be, successful members of society, or much less helpful people in our classroom. Because outside of the classroom, outside of the school, they're faced with all sorts sorts of environments and different, traumas, honestly, that 9 and 10-year-old kids that I deal with shouldn't have had to see at that age, And so in my classroom, even when there is conflict, because there's going to be conflict between humans, we know how to deal with it and move on from it and learn from it so that that doesn't necessarily happen again. And if it does, we talk about it again instead of just digging ourselves deeper,
Working with Caleb or Chattanoogan's in Action for Love, Equality, and Benevolence, we went about applying for grants, raising money, and essentially raising $40,000 in grant money and donations, which will allow us to effectively implement a restorative practice program full school with K through 5.
What's most important is making sure that we provide a safe place for our kids. If they never have the supports to deal with the trauma that they have experienced as a child, then as an adult, then you start seeing them participating in activities that will lead them, down that prison pipeline.
Our partnership over the past year with Orchard Knob Elementary and the Southern Adventist University is already showing results. Suspensions are down over 50% for the 2021 and 2022 school year as compared to the last non-COVID 2019-2020 school year. In addition, we're getting positive feedback from staff and students who note the change in their classroom environment. Yet successfully implementation does require adequate funding, ongoing staff training, and administrative support. So I have a couple questions for you around discipline policies, and I just want to be mindful that we're getting close to our ending time. But the first one is, where does addressing the disproportionate rate of suspensions and expulsions fall in the priorities you would have as a school board member?
So I'll start, and it's obviously high. As I've mentioned, safety is the number one, is one of my concerns, and the rate is just astounding. There's absolutely an inequitable amount, and it is just appalling. I'm glad that it's being addressed. I'm glad that it's being spoken about here because, and again, kind of jumping ahead, but if the goal of public education is to truly help each student get to their potential and be successful and a community member who is not just successful, but contributing back to our shared society, then a strictly punitive disciplinary policy won't get us there, and it never will. Beyond that, we need to admit that the needs are different across the county, as we've talked about the inequitable practices of trying to use the same peanut butter on the whole county. There is no one answer, but we need to allocate resources to make sure that we address the needs of each student where they are, and make sure that that circumstance is targeted and dealt with in a proper manner. Restorative practices officers, guidance counselors, and more. But that's where I stand.
When we think about basic needs that children have, or that everyone has, that adults have, children need to feel, safe, have, clothes on, have food, all these things. What really inspires me and what I really love about the restorative practices work that Caleb is doing, and that we saw is really successful, that was really successful at Orchard Knob, is that it does take into effect the reason behind why a child might be exhibiting behaviors that are less than wonderful. So negative behaviors, in fact. So, like Ben just said, we can't just punish somebody into being a good person. That hasn't ever worked, and it doesn't. So more punishment is definitely not what we need. Understanding the reason behind why a child is doing what they're doing is vital. It builds relationships, it builds self-esteem, it shows that the adults involved, the classmates involved, are invested in that child, and therefore they at the top of my list as a school board member.
So once again, making sure there's funding available for all schools to have restorative justice practices in their buildings, because it looks a variety of ways in a variety of different schools. I often use the example of RTI at Daisy Elementary, how well it does at Daisy Elementary. I'm not saying that in a bad way. I want you all to understand where I just said that school is located. And they are like the star pupil for RTI. They do it well, have been recognized for doing it well. So once again, it happens. These behaviors are not just in one place. It's across the county. So I think restorative justice practices are very well. I know in a lot of schools, there are calm down rooms. They use weighted blankets. They have creative ways and innovative ways that students learn. The little chairs that spin around like a dreidel. I mean, it's all kind of neat stuff to keep kids in tune and to help them learn how the lights are dimmed. And one might have been an Arch or not, they have the ceiling tiles that look like clouds. So when they go into the calm down room and they lay down and it's kind of calm, and they have the lights around the ceiling and they look up and it's like clouds and it's serene. But all those things help children to calm down, because you don't know the trauma that they left that morning or that they experienced the night before or may have been experienced for days. And so you have to be able to address whatever's going on there before they're able to learn academically. So the biggest thing is having restorative justice practices in place, having mindfulness in place. I know some schools do the yoga, mindfulness, relaxation techniques, and a lot of things to get children grounded before they can even start to learn, because of where they're leaving and where they're coming from. So that's really important there. So you have to do it there, and you have to know that it's just, and even in doing that, you're not going to meet every child. And you have to have accountability for student behavior there. It's for the code of acceptable behavior, because I think the question circled around the code of acceptable behavior. That is fairly new to the district. That hasn't always been there. And there are some issues with it being implemented with equitable solutions to those behaviors. And I think that's where there's a learning opportunity for administration, for teachers in the building, for staff in the building, to learn how to figure out what is going to be best for the child and or the children in that situation, and ensure that you're giving equitable consequences for what it looks like. But before you can do that, and then I'm going to be quiet, there's still work to be done, going back to the whole equity policy, where you have to be able to address your implicit biases. Because if you don't address your implicit biases subconsciously, and we all do this, subconsciously, your response is going to be what it is because of whatever implicit bias that you have, no matter how hard you think you're fighting against that or not doing that. So you have to be aware of your implicit biases. We all do, in implementing certain strategies and certain things, so that we don't cause inequitable consequences for behaviors.
Yeah. Our last question around discipline policies is, how would you support moving towards better outcomes for all students involved? What is that going to look like?
So it's specifically related to the discipline policy?
How would you support the discipline policy? Yeah. Support moving towards better outcomes for all students.
Well, with a 50% decrease in suspensions at Orchard Knob in a year, I mean, my God, that's incredible. That is absolutely incredible. So, I mean, I would like to see restorative practices across the board at every school. I mean, it obviously works.
Yeah.
I agree with that. And only to add to it, I would want to say that I would want to listen and learn more as a school board member, making sure that, as Karitsa has pointed out, that yes, if elected, I'm elected from the District 6, but I sit on the Hamilton County School Board and make decisions for the entirety of our county schools. And that's every single one of them. Making sure that every single one of them has the opportunity to have these methods and the right tools to get to the right practices. We need to have community-driven outcomes and make sure that we're coming together as a community.
Yeah.
I would just continue to implement restorative practices and more train the trainer models. Oftentimes with PD, you can't just learn it and just, okay, you got it, and we don't ever have to go back. But you have to continue to have continuing education opportunities available, and you learn a lot from your peers. So the way that Archer Knob may be doing, you all may be doing restorative justice practices there, it may work for Clifton Hills, it may not work for Clifton Hills. A piece of it may work, but then maybe something that somebody's doing at Battle may work, and they can take a piece from Archer Knob and a piece of Battle. So you learn from your peers, and you're able to add on. But I think you'd have to always continue to support continuing education in those efforts, so that we're on the cusp of the new methods in which to address those concerns as times change and society changes.
Right. Well, thank you so much. For our last portion, we have a series of direct questions that we'd like for each of you to respond with a yes or no. Our first one is, as a school board member, will you support and promote funding for the expansion of restorative practice training and support throughout the district?
Yes.
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 All right. Number two, will you agree to meet with members of Caleb's education task force on a biannual basis to discuss issues of equity in the school district?
Enthusiastically.
Yes, them and every other member of the community. Yes.
Yes, I would. As long as they show up.
Yeah. All right. Will you consider Caleb nominees to serve on future committees organized by the school board?
You say nominees, you mean like recommendations?
Yeah, consider Caleb nominees
for
committees organized by the school board.
Okay, you mean like the book committees and that kind of stuff that we did? Oh, yeah, I'm open to that.
Yes, I think anybody that has interest in anything on the school board should be considered. If they have interest, then I want to cultivate it.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, I want to thank you. That is the closing of our forum tonight. I want to thank you for being here on behalf of Caleb and our co-sponsors. And if I put my parent hat, I want to thank you as well for coming and representing your districts. And just, as a parent, how important that is for me and my kids in the district and the county, and how important our county commissioners are to this conversation. And so, yeah, I thank you all. I hope you guys have a great evening, and don't forget to go out and vote.
August 4th.
Thank you.